is Michael Williams. I'm currently in apartment 14 in the San Uriel condominiums with my piece of shit brother. I'm calling you because I've killed my mother. I'm going to kill my brother. And then I'm going to kill myself.
Okay, sir, stay with me. I would like to...
Don't tell me what to do!
Suspects have taken refuge in the area and are refusing to cooperate. Move in, remember your use of force, and secure the area. Entry team, move and clear.
Hello, dear viewer. I apologise for not being there in person. Your mother's behind was simply too ravishing to pass up.
Shut the fuck up!
Today's topic, American policing. The comments section is already typing. In the far-flung dystopian future of 2025, the American people fell for it again. The Great West has been imperiled by a divorced dad and a convicted sex offender he's bankrolling. Airplanes are crashing better than they're flying. Inflation is on the rise, and one particular British guy is getting a little hot under the collar. Idiots twist the imposed austerity and poverty of a capitalistic society as a sign of an incoming communist takeover, unaware of the massive dent in their skull chafing their brain function. Some may say that running the country is hard work. You can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs, which is what people would have said when they used to be able to afford that metaphor. Amidst all this chaos, unrest, fear, violence, crime, this strenuous economic pressure, completely self-inflicted and serving zero beneficial purpose, has created many lucrative financial opportunities for criminals, outlaws, who can manipulate the desperation for financial stability of normal folk to improve their market share. It's time we triple the police spending budget and send in the boys in blue, ignoring the root cause of this adversity and proceeding to address only the extreme results when it's far too late. This is a completely hypothetical, totally fictional, unbelievably impossible dystopian thought exercise posited by Void Interactive's flagship title, Ready or Not. Ready or Not is a tactical co-op and single-player shooter in which the player takes control of a SWAT commander called Judge, tasked with defusing violent crime across the many different locales of Los Sueños. Gaining notoriety from a few release trailers and a generally awful PvP alpha,
the hostiles have control of the zone. Guess it's on me to secure it.
That shit is fucking trash, dog. Get the fuck off the airway.
It made its debut into early access in December of 2021, where it rapidly picked up an audience and became renowned as a smash hit. I was one of the many to be playing the game in its earliest iteration of what was to come in the future, and keeping tabs on it throughout the years, I found myself rather pleased with the differing directions it had taken to reach its current finalized state. I've stuck with it through the Kotaku articles, the wars fought in the official Discord over the potential inclusion of women, the Steam forums claiming it's a scam, the 4TB data leak, and through it all I have reached a conclusion. It's a good game, a very good game, but it's not perfect. Flawed in places too obvious to ignore, it presents me with the perfect opportunity to waste your time without you realizing that's what's happening. So sit back, compliment the haircut of that detained suspect, and shoot a man dead for surrendering too fast. Because I'm about to explain why Ready or Not is unlike other shooters.
感情につける名前は自由だねほら変わり果てた消せない僕の罪を引き金が溶けてしまいそうで憎しみが消えてしまったら君を殺せないから覚悟出してる罪が作った僕に変わるために栄養線のナイフで記憶のシグナル刻まれてるのに痛みさえ消し去ってしまう絆のスパイラル迷い込んだ僕は僕だ消えてくれていく
Don't move! Police, don't move! Get down now!
The only chance you have.
LSPD, don't move! Drop it or you're gonna get shot!
Drop your weapon now.
Put the fucking gun!
Smug Rubric, you sly dog. Did you really think we would be so easily deceived? You get just a little bit of clout from YouTube and suddenly you've turned your back on your morals, plugging propaganda and citing it as profound, artistic, interactive media. Shall you soon shed a tear for how bad it hurts for police's feelings to murder a black teenager? How the mighty have fallen. Does your next upload depict you sucking the delectable toes of Mark Edward Kern as he rants that Stellar Blade does not show enough cleavage to defy the woke hordes? You are right to be angry, dear viewer. I realise that presenting a game like this to some of you may be sacrilegious. At a glance, it looks like I am praising a hollow fascist's LARP. It's not difficult to exactly see why. Even anecdotally, my first memories associated with the game were the demented tirade you'd often see absolute brainlets profess in chat. For years, I've been haunted by this message, a piece of digital correspondence sent back during the game's major resurgence that I've spoken about many a time with friends. In effect, this loser requested the implementation of a woman toggle, so that if anyone else was using a female SWAT character, he could hit a switch so his fragile worldview didn't come apart. This kind of guy, ambushing chat when innocent requests for playable female officers were voiced, was not an individual but a whole subgenre of chud that had to be dealt with daily by the developers. Idiots online like to claim Kotaku got Void Interactive to bend the knee following the release of their scathing hit piece, but, as usual, they don't know what they're talking about. The article raised some pretty fair concerns about Radionaut's intention to serve as the twisted facsimile of modern America it claimed itself to be, or, potentially, if it was aiming to be a political power fantasy for a certain clique of online race scientists. What brought this scrutiny on was the use of placeholder assets supplied from an unknown contractor that, unbeknownst to the developers, were named with racist dog whistles found on far-right 4chan boards, such as Jogger to reference the infamous murder of Ahmaud Arbery. Of course, Noggin Jogger in of itself isn't racist. It's a turn of phrase used to reference stimulating one's mind, kick-starting the brain. It is very likely most people looked at this and didn't think anything of it. But in a game depicting American law enforcement, a hotbed of contentious social issues, the vigilance around its use isn't as ridiculous as many have said it to be, especially when it's planted right next to a red pill reference that doesn't make any sense being there. Nowadays, much of far-right ideology relies on subtlety and plausible deniability to establish itself anywhere. To me, what's actually ridiculous is the idea Kotaku strong-armed Void Interactive into retracting a bunch of intended features because, in reality, the developers were so dead set on their vision of Ready or Not that they were more willing to part ways with their publisher Team 17 than be forced to scrap the school shooting level they had planned for the final version of the game. It wasn't that Void was peer pressured by the woke journalists of Kotaku, but really that they realized very fast what sort of audience they were congregating propagating and issued a public statement to nip it in the bud. If anyone currently watching sincerely believes the game was somehow worsened by the issuing of this one social media post, I already spoke about you at the start of the video, and evidently you didn't realize. But this recounting of the internet's usual social discourse is beside the point. Often what sort of audience a game attracts informs you of its contents, its touted beliefs and sentiments. So, if you were to glimpse this compendium of goose steppers doubling as a video game's concentrated community, is it any wonder one would assume Ready or Not to be an endorsement of fascist proclivity? Games usually peddle a power fantasy as part of their appeal, and, for the most part, there is a degree of separation as a result of the fictional world it takes place within. But a shooter like Ready or Not takes place in a socially contentious theatre, a SWAT commander carrying out raids in what is practically modern-day Los Angeles, rife with poverty and social disorder. You're an officer of an institution that historically enforced slavery, segregation, and is known to be predisposed towards white supremacy. This perspective comes with a lot of baggage, and conceptually pitting this police force as the good guys comes across as an unspoken endorsement of a profession in which 40% of its workers are known to express their love physically. But, truth be told, Ready or Not is not propaganda, because when I shoot a civilian, I get in trouble. Even more than this, to play this game like you normally would, shooting the moment you spot someone betroths you to catastrophic failure. And this, right here, is the key to why Ready or Not is unlike any other shooter. When one speaks of video games in the modern day, what is the genre that comes to mind?
Let's go! Let's go!
Shut your bitch ass up, nigga. Bro, I really get on you, nigga. Shut your stupid ass up, nigga. You fucking dumbass.
First-person shooters. Running and gunning, regenerating health, inexhaustible pools of ammunition, all wrapped up in a glory of gratuitous violence. These games are often synonymous with the conventional view that gaming is a surface-level pastime in killing everything you see. This perception is compounded by the presentation of video games and movies throughout the early 21st century, a depiction informed by the popularity of the genre, and this is likely because the design tropes are casual-friendly in nature to better appeal to a wider demographic of players. These games are usually so fast-paced not because the developers have turned up a speed modifier, but because it's the emergent result of their mechanical choices. Infinite sprint, and even limited sprint, let you quickly move through maps without much need to stop. You don't have to worry about running into enemies because the time taken to raise your gun is minimal, made even quicker by attachments improving ADS time. Regenerating health lets you persist through extended fighting without needing to slow your roll. Ammunition retained across fast reloads means you can always stay topped up so you're prepared for your next engagement. Death doesn't matter because respawn timers don't take very long. All of this surrounding a central objective that allows the player to engage with the most fun aspect of shooters, shooting the enemy until you win.
Boys ready for your cock meat sandwich?
Yes, the likes of something like Ground Branch, 6 Days in Fallujah, Bodycam and Zero Hour are quite different. The player is more delicate and damage sustained is permanent, so, as a result, gameplay errs towards a slower and more methodical approach. That being said, they are not wholly dissimilar. For instance, watch this clip. This player sees something resembling a human figure and, without hesitation, shoots them dead. No thought given to target identification, just relishing the simplicity of cold-blooded murder. But, for the likes of Ready or Not, this is not the case. Every mission faced in the game is differentiated by a number of primary objectives. Of them, 2 will remain a constant: rescue all civilians and bring order to chaos. The first objective relates to the existence of unarmed non-combatants on the scene who, unfortunately, are mixed in with the suspects. The usual interaction of high-powered projectile and someone's cranium is impeded by the need for target identification. If a single civilian dies, regardless of the cause, the objective fails and your mission grade is severely impacted. Even more interesting than this, though, is the second objective. Where these other games would ascribe this to gunning down anyone on scene with a gun, Ready or Not doesn't predicate this objective's success on death. Suspects can be apprehended, and, based on the fact you can only ever S-rank a level by not killing a single person, it's downright expected as the preferable outcome. To kill a criminal without giving them an opportunity to surrender will dock a good chunk of points from your given rank at the end of a mission. Killing a majority of the suspects, even when lawfully done, will not let you get any higher than a B letter grade. While other games are happy for you to liberally dispense hateful lead everywhere, busting ballistic loads over the faces of adversaries, Ready or Not expects restraint in its application. A tactical shooter that, ideally, doesn't want you shooting. So when we have these important conversations about games depicting the military and other arms of government intervention as their protagonists, really the ones we ought to levy our critique towards are the ones that have so closely defined this popular genre. The ones that dilute the blatancy of what they're doing in absurd action and arcade game mechanics, all the while subliminally imposing America and its numerous agencies as the obvious international forces of good fighting for your eternal freedom. This strongly opposes our shared reality, that these government bodies exist and have solely existed to enforce a status quo that has become increasingly unfriendly to the plights of the common people they supposedly exist to liberate. There's a word for the kind of media that declares itself to be apolitical impartiality while revising history to donate ownership of war crimes to international rivals for the sake of bettering its own image. Insidious, dishonest, revisionist, propaganda. They're all fucking propaganda, because each of these developers are taking a propaganda at the fat stacks of cash the United States is willing to pay them. So while it's reasonable to be apprehensive about Ready or Not conceptually, knowing how often authoritarian aesthetic is used as a power fantasy for ghouls online, rest assured that it's nothing like these aforementioned titles. No, dear viewer, I think Ready or Not makes honest use of this assumedly dubious perspective as an agent of the law's will to not just provide insight into societal decline, but also to create an involving and engaging tactical shooter experience whilst doing so. Another day at the office brings you to the local precinct, a building populated by plasticine faces, vacant gazes, and diabolical hairlines. This man's barber ought to be put down, but these concerns are none of ours.
Bombastic side-eye.
Only the active ongoing missions in the briefing room require our attention, the first being the perfect stage for us to begin our dissection. Thank you. Come again. A band of armed criminals have descended upon a local gas station to pilfer it of all its honest money. Driven rabid by addiction, these brigands steal in the name of the only thing left worth protecting. Gacha. Another few dollars, and that shapely rat lady, accompanied by all the thigh-squish Hoyoverse could ever animate, will be theirs. Another case of honest gooners driven to violent acts by a rising tide. This cannot be suffered. It's illegal, immoral, and unconstitutional, like a South African apartheid beneficiary stripping away government services without official sanction. We wouldn't just allow that to happen, would we?
I am become meme. Yeah, pretty much.
But hold it, dear viewer. It would be foolish to venture in without your trusty multi-billion-dollar spending budget at your side. Adjacent to the briefing room, a locker hall to customize your loadout, complete with a shooting range to familiarize yourself with your armament of choice. Shotguns, submachine guns, assault rifles, and pistols of a vast variety are available for use, custom built depending on how big of a hole you want to punch through a dissident target. These are configured between hollow point ammunition to subdue unarmored targets without over-penetrating, and armor-piercing rounds to counter suspects better prepared for a fight. This, however, is not the conclusion to your sortie. Your utility gadgets are of equal, if not greater importance. Lockpick guns to silently open doors, C2 charges to get every suspect in the local area to piss themselves. Non-lethal grenades to stun subjects indirectly, tasers to apply your authority directly to the suspect's ballsack, shields to politely refute a suspect's kind offers of internal hemorrhaging, grenade launchers to charmingly invite a dissident to suffer a concussion. These tools are all extremely useful in manipulating the odds of a confrontation in your favor by gaining entry through advantageous pathways in a building or by subduing large groups of suspects in one fell swoop. Sometimes things can go awry, and a stray round may connect with your mortal frame. Body armor is an investment in continued longevity, preventing damage being dealt to your finite health meter, available in 2 flavors. Light armor is the platonic ideal of mission effectiveness, coverage ensuring to protect vital areas that would incur catastrophic damage while allowing for significant agility and 13 slots of inventory space. Heavy armor widens coverage to the extremities and your loving loins, but reduces inventory size by 2 slots. The space is divided between the number of magazines you pack for your firearms and any following gadgets. gadgets such as breaching tools and grenades, meaning an increase in protective surface area diminishes your overall offensive capabilities. But these two genres of life insurance only manipulate the armor's coverage. The quality of protection comes down to the inserts you pick from the free available options. Kevlar is weak, resilient only to pistol rounds, but lightweight and will consistently protect you. Ceramic plates possess the resolve to weather impact from larger calibers at a greater weight penalty, but once broken are rendered useless. Steel panels offer nigh impenetrability, but are extremely heavy and occasionally will create debris when struck that damages the player. Coverage can be configured between the traditional front and back, the thrill-seeking front only, and the heavy armor exclusive all-encompassing total protection. What a mission demands of you, and in turn what you bring to address those requests, changes with each deployment. Thank You Come Again is the first of a few levels that exist to ease the player into the overall experience of the game before they start tackling the harder assignments, where suspects perforate your fragile and submissive body with a dominant might of 762.
Did your dick get hard?
The gas station introduces the player to the concept of navigating an enclosed interior of divided rooms, interacting with civilians and suspects alike, as well as employing their arsenal to best improve the odds of success in their favour. Each side of the establishment is accessible from the outside. Suspects number few and are impotent in both resolve and firearm caliber, civilian contacts are easy to locate and detain, and your objectives remain straightforward. The complementary soft objectives are mission goals that you have to find on your own, usually locating people of interest or securing critical evidence along with the numerous dropped guns you'll have to pick up at the end of a level. The fact these are not known in a briefing are fitting for the premise. It creates a sense of an ever-evolving internal environment in which new developments are made before they can be communicated to you, and it appeals to the player's keen, forensic eye. I myself boast great investigative ability. An anecdote. I have a channel in the Smug Bastards Incorporated Discord server for sharing pieces of artwork. The Gooners often congregate to relish the creative flourish of shapely anthropomorphic characters. I submitted one such image before being alerted to the presence of a prominent phallic protrusion. To be caught submitting something such as this is an ineffable offense to humankind. But this is not a dick bulge. No, dear viewer, it's just a mere fold of the fabric. It made no sense. What would this penile outline be doing in this piece, disappearing off the side of a canvas where its delectable shape could not be seen? Something was off. So I contacted the artist to relinquish the grasp of the confusion besetting the server through this art piece. Official input from the one who ordained such a creation would put matters to bed. That is when I was informed that it actually was a dick bulge, and consequently I was mocked for the rest of my life. I think I forgot what I was talking about. The point is that Redionaut's gameplay revolves around more than locating an enemy and squeezing the trigger. The logistical concerns of your loadout and the interactivity between player and NPC, civilian or suspect, leans into the sense of unpredictability that a game like this is aiming to depict. Things can change on the fly. By calling out for compliance to a suspect, a risk is taken. Some may turn with weapon raised to commence a fight, while others will hide their gun behind their back. Others may hesitate, uncertain in confronting multiple heavily armed officers before lowering their weapon. Of these suspects, some are cunning, and may then raise their gun at the last second to attack you. If you wrongfully assumed someone to be complying and turn away, you're exposing your unprotected flank to an armed adversary. This means your finite health can be directly wounded with a debilitating hit. Being struck can cause bleeding and will impair your respective limb. Shot legs cannot kick open doors, and perforated arms struggle to hold up a weapon, granting you all the prevailing aim of Hector Salamanca. Wow, an unfunny Breaking Bad reference in my video? I really am a pyrocynical knockoff.
I'm not continuing this stream.
The unpredictability of the suspect AI is compounded by the nature of interior engagement, tutorialized best in the next mission known as 23 megabytes a second, one of my favorite levels in all of the base game and its DLC. A kick streamer has gone rogue and started making Minecraft Let's Plays, a groundbreaking revelation among the likes of This Morning, The Sun Rose Over the Horizon, and Aiden Ross has vouched for yet another groomer. Wrangling suspects in a gas station isn't too tricky. Divided across confined spaces, only able to react upon being immediately cornered, there's not much room for them to sow chaos. But AI operate by a simple system of if I can't see you, you cannot see me. The moment you enter visual range of a suspect, their relative docility shifts into aggressive hostility. facility. If you fail to see the exterior staircase on the right that gives you a concealed path of entry into the building's innards, and instead walk through the exposed hall overseen by multiple balconies, the armed assailants that spawn above you will activate and start unloading volleys of lead upon you and your team. These activated suspects move fast to either flank you or reposition to places you've potentially already cleared and catch you by surprise. If civilians are near them, they'll snatch them as a human shield and consequently reveal their continued service as a soldier of Israel. They become a more dynamic threat in which your control of the situation is ceded to chaos, and consequently the safety of all involved parties are put into jeopardy. The importance of these engagements come down to the interior environment, something you rarely even see in the likes of great games like Metal Gear Solid 5. This game, renowned for its player freedom a decade later, offered a multitude of options for those who wished to execute a stealthy insertion and those who took stealth as a mere suggestion. You had fire support, buddy assistance, and equipment drops to give yourself necessary leverage to best squads of armed foes. Spotting threats ahead of time and planning around them was easy in the open. However, in the few enclosed spaces included in the game, this advantage was lost. In Code Talk as mentioned, you can't see what's through the next door, or who is in adjacent rooms without exposing yourself. It's easy to be overheard while moving, and there aren't many escape routes to avoid being cornered. This is the closest I felt to true vulnerability while playing, that I really was a lone soldier outnumbered and outgunned by a trained opponent, and the reason I didn't experience more of this was because staging more of the game in interior environments meant all the extra options you'd usually get in the outside world would be rendered useless. This is the same case for many lesser games too. As technology has improved, war shooters have involved themselves in the gradual power creep towards combined arms gaming. You don't really see many games in the genre debut without allowing you to drive helicopters, armored vehicles, cars, and so on. These options are exclusive to exterior environments, so naturally, you aren't often given the chance to be pushing through confined spaces because it will come at the cost of what makes the game supposedly more interesting. Something like Operation Locker is just a gimmick, an endless clusterfuck of grenades and gunfire where you can't do anything but ceaselessly engage the enemy ahead of you. But I don't care if it's a clusterfuck, it's my clusterfuck, where players hogging attack helicopters are forced to do something other than jerk off to the leaderboard. This is the exact reason why Ready or Not levies a paranoid tension that other games usually lack. Actively hostile suspects have many places to hide, and when they only need a couple of well-placed shots to kill you, it makes players extremely cautious of where they place their next step. The pace slows, the tension rises, and the uncomfortable silence draws out to unnerving lengths. Around every corner, through every doorway, behind every wall, a threat of unknown number and strength lingers. All of this amassed anxiety congregating at the center of your mind as chances of peaceful resolution wane, hurtles towards the climactic release, resting upon a trigger. Armed confrontations are brief, yet undoubtedly intense and startling affairs. Your screen shakes and blurs as rounds whiz past you to add to the confusion of a sudden ambush. If you can't see the target, all you have to go off are where the bangs are emanating from. The cacophony's sudden arrival adds to the slice of chaos. Your SWAT officers' yells for compliance, the stuttering gunfire, the continued cries of pain from those incapacitated and killed in the firefight. Dropping an adversary and hearing your team call out to one another that the suspect has been subdued impresses upon you a sense of coordination and rigorous procedure. If you've played your cards right, one quick bout of raucous lead dispensing will come to a swift end. Control of the situation will allow you to deal with these pockets of resistance as quickly as they arise. But if you pushed through an unfortunate position, or ended up in an exposed area overseen by armed suspects like the Mindjot data center server rooms or Greased Palm's post-sorting floor, the gunfire will kick up and won't stop. Think about how odd this is. In most games, the sound of constant gunfire is an expectation. It directs you towards the fun you're paying to have. But in Ready or Not, continuous gunfire is nothing but a bad omen. It means that a suspect has a bead on you from an angle that prevents retaliation, means there is a looming dynamic threat that can do anything at any given time, and also likely means one of your team just ate a colossal pile of shit. Gunfights in Ready or Not are not the intended norm, but the climactic payoff of the accrued tension you've endured leading to that point. It is a thoroughly satisfying affair. Weapons impose themselves with weight and impact, making shots that connect riveting to land through the confusion, and the brutality of the affair is not lost on you. Rifle rounds punch holes through suspects, shotguns peel off faces and tear away limbs, dead contacts will lie in their own pooling blood, eyes wide open with vacant stares. As thrilling as a gunfight can be when engaged on your own terms, the chilling sounds of agony and the viscera left in the wake of the engagement counterweight the gunfight. It's almost unfair that Ready or Not has made its gunplay this enticing, and yet, ideally it doesn't want you to ever really engage with it. That's why sometimes I like to do a little bit of roleplay. Listen dear viewer, I've S-ranked every mission of the base game. I've suffered at the hands of Void Interactive and their bullshit human compassion. So an exercise I partake in to unwind is I pretend to be a government spook of a clandestine agency, given carte blanche to neutralize the one true remaining threat to the American state. Twitter users sharing images of Elon Musk hanging out with Ghislaine Maxwell. The truth is too woke to be left alive. But Ready or Not is more than just satisfying engagements in confined spaces. The end of a mission brings you an opportunity to look around at the constructed world while your armed interns go and carry out community service. Every inch is pockmarked with deliberate detail. The developers underwent a purposeful, meticulous process of filling the environment with life, not just to gild your shooting range with a semblance of realism, but, in conjunction with the music, to tell the player one thing: a story. The missions you play in Ready or Not are supplemented with a wealth of extra information. Your handy tablet compiles together a briefing recording, a list of key suspects, different maps of the area, and the recordings of a 911 call that brought the situation to your attention. These are all incredible additions that familiarise the player with the sort of citywide unease being experienced, the panic felt by those unfortunate enough to be trapped in a building with roving gunmen. Each of these missions, while not occurring chronologically, are split up into their own narrative threads pertaining to different criminal factions and their respective shenanigans. It's already a testament to the depth of detail Void Interactive has wielded that I can't talk about each thread individually. I would be yapping way too much for any mortal man to ever endure. But I can use one single storyline to best exemplify Ready or Not's knack for environmental storytelling and how there is more to it than one would expect. Where better to start than with the central antagonist of 23 megabytes a second, Asmongold. This mission takes place in the sun-roasted concrete residential block known as the San Uriel condominiums. Unlike many war shooters that establish themselves in drab colour schemes, Ready or Not involves itself in a diverse array of colours right from the start. The lush greenery overgrown on parts of the building and the radiant rays of sunlight pouring through the roof illuminate the scene with a vibrance you usually don't expect in games similarly grounded in their premise like Ready or Not. The call dispatch received preceding the operation had a young man identifying himself as Michael Williams, the fiend bold enough to call himself Milky Toes Games, and confessing to the murder of his mother. His sibling would be next, and right after that, he would proceed to turn the gun on himself. But when you arrive, oddly enough, you don't find a hostage situation. Instead, you find a gang of armed hooligans loitering the premises, ready to trade shots with you and your team. An illegal Bitcoin mining operation is being run in one of the lower apartments, while, upstairs, the illustrious gamerpad of our insufferable internet icon has been turned into an impromptu defensive position. Sweeping the level and detaining Michael, you soon enter his room and find that he was streaming at the time of the raid. His high-pitched whining voice strongly contrasts the tone of the caller. The person on the phone wasn't your man, but instead someone who swatted this fetid beast. This concept in of itself is why this mission is one of my favourites. The use of a streamer being swatted as a mission scenario shows how cognizant Void Interactive are of their setting, how online popular culture often has unfortunate clashes with armed law enforcement in this exact way, and it's furthered by the attention to detail given for Michael's apartment. It's a den of RGB delirium, a place laden with nerd paraphernalia, doubling as property available for cockroaches to start renting. This is exactly the kind of gaudy and garish pigsty I'd expect someone called Milky Toes Games to live in. Ready or Not includes an evidence locker for extra tidbits of info on items seized following your raids, granting you more items based on the higher rank you get. It's a cool intersection of gameplay and storytelling where you're rewarded for your success by getting to uncover more. From this mission, you're given greater insight insight into Michael as a character, and it's made obvious that Void Interactive have a pretty good grasp on the social dynamics and culture of our modern internet. Michael is a caricature of many mainstream internet ghouls we know today. He scammed his own unsuspecting fanbase through cryptocurrency to his benefit. He's the proud owner of sexual misconduct allegations that people immediately forgot about despite the integrity of the supporting evidence, and was in possession of a specific anime figure that forensics found to be coated in a number of different DNA sources. These poor anime figurines remain frozen in horror right beside the napkins Michael used to pleasure his little isekai protagonist. This isn't all that's of note here. Your soft objectives are entirely unknown to you, reflecting how the situation you've arrived at is completely different from what you were expecting, and it's only as you investigate Michael's bedroom that you realise how different things are. At his streaming desk, one of his monitors depicts a conversation shared with someone else on Discord. Another day, another man makes the fatal mistake of keeping his gooning stash on the same device as his cloud collector. Does no one know the cautionary tale of Atriox's downfall? More concerning than this flagrant lack of caution, however, is the conversation's topic. Michael is sending rather inappropriate photos to someone else online. Approaching Michael's bedside, you find more of these images. The kind of images someone is not ever meant to mention on YouTube. At this moment of realization, a low foreboding tone reverberates through the still room. This really is one of Ready or Not's greatest strengths, taking scenes that are grounded in our modern lives, but adding enough intrigue that the player's investment isn't diluted by the mundanity of what we already know. What started as just another swatting has rapidly led to the uncovering of a criminal ring. The mission that follows is known as the Spider. A homeless guy on the Row, a parallel to Los Angeles' infamous zone of affluence, tells an officer that a child talent agency called Brixley's Talent Time has women and children fluctuating inward daily. Once a week, trucks of armed men arrive for a furtive rendezvous. Making entry confronts you with guards clad in hoodies and masks, toting submachine guns. The talent agency is a poorly converted needle clinic. Notice boards and signs still remain up on the walls, and rooms have been poorly renovated into play areas and dressing rooms. One of the chambers converted into a photo booth is clearly where some of Michael's pictures were obtained from. The man in charge of the place is a George Brixley, an unstable war veteran who evidently does not possess the sort of vocational aptitude one would expect from a business's proprietor.
From the top.
I don't like this movie.
I don't care. Say the line.
I don't want to.
The fuck you say to me, you little
It becomes evident there's an ulterior motive at play when you find the off-putting portrait in George's office and the extensive online chat room conversation with another user known only as AV. Following this escapade, the entry team progresses to the Mindjot data center. This server hosting company was partnered closely with Michael, and their chat rooms were being used by George to contact this shadowy other figure. The building of humming server units and well-illuminated office spaces paints a picture of paranoia and fear. Detained guards will remark they had no idea you were actual officers. A picture at the front desk depicts a police impersonator who receptionists are instructed to report right away, and upstairs, the security team have written instructions on their whiteboard to never be left alone where someone can snatch them. Evidently, long before your arrival, someone else has been working hard to try and cover up their tracks. Although this mission has no soft objectives, it's not hard to do a little digging yourself and find some answers. Notes left around the place make mention of a secretive server unit privately encrypted, one that Michael mentions in his Discord DM as being the place he took some of the photos from. On this server unit, a set of initials denote the container of criminal contraband, AV. This brings the entry team to the final stage of its narrative thread, known as Valley of the Dolls. Valley of the Dolls is a sprawling abode of extravagance, a multi-level mansion of glamour housing multiple bedrooms, home cinemas, private gyms, flat-screen televisions, a personal garden, and a whole outside patio for parties and swimming in the pool. This home belongs to Amos Vol, a savant of risque cinema and female anatomy, who is celebrating the birthday of his own daughter. The scene is packed tight with civilian contacts and numerous members of a Bolton security team, a cadre of military veterans turned guns for hire that do Vol's bidding. Most of the upper floors are confined for easier engagement. Stupid! But, as you descend, the kitchen and living room are exposed to the wide patio outside by floor-to-ceiling windows. The situation can spiral out of control if entry is made through here, where you can be shot at from multiple sides, so it's best to have one team hold the threshold and wait until you and the others take a side door into the exterior. After the main challenge has been conquered, you find exactly what kind of man Vol is. Beneath a veneer of sensual statues, extravagant wealth, and moaning films, the true horror awaits you, down in a basement. In a domain of dim red lights, the innards of the water pump storage rooms have been hastily repurposed into a twisted sanctum. In one room, a baby's crib next to a child's bed. Filming lights are positioned nearby, as if in preparation to record something. The corridor outside has a chalk hopscotch ladder drawn on the floor. In the next room lies the destination of expended victims. Sealed barrels, partially buried, lying beside children's clothes. In the next chamber, a photo development studio in which Vol's assistant would work to produce the fruits of their twisted, perverted labour. Through this place of unflinching efficiency, a shrine, floor partially submerged in water, where Vol devoted himself to his own child. Collages of pictures completely cover the walls to reconstruct a child's face, laden with written messages of adoration. In lieu of the silence, a faint, distorted chittering emerges. A gallery of young, ghostly voices trying to whisper to you so someone knows what that man did to them. Brixley took the photos and found the victims. Michael distributed the images, Mindjot hosted the servers, Amos Vol funded it all, and disposed of the victims. A tale befitting the title of its narrative thread known as The Exploited. This is what I mean when I say Ready or Not is unlike other shooters. It's a game that has taken its time to carefully develop and construct an environment that beckons your intrigue, that gives context to your involvement, and continues to place you in the modern world it depicts with prevailing success. A world conscious of the systemic problems plaguing it, and ultimately how they undermine your involvement as the supposed good guys. The final mission of the game, Hide and Seek, serves as a unifying conclusion to the base campaign. A joint operation between multiple government agencies descends upon the warehouse of Port Hoken to rout and quash the heart of Los Sueños trafficking scandal. The gameplay challenges presented match this narrative climax well in intensity. While in the pouring rain at night, you have to clear open stretches of ground of well-armed henchmen patrolling the vicinity. The exposed road in front of a warehouse means suspects will activate and engage you from long distances, forcing you to stick to the numerous trucks and shipping containers for cover. Inside offers an equally challenging scene, a maze of imported goods affording many places for suspects to hide and ambush you. Once suspects have been thoroughly bested, you notice how all the cars have gathered around one of the shipping containers at the back of a warehouse. Inside, through the tunnels of corrugated sheet metal, an auction house has been sequestered away from prying eyes. Laptop screens depict masked auctioneers waiting to bid on closely coveted prizes. Your arrival sends them rushing to turn off the cameras, and, left in their wake, a crudely drawn spider referencing the name of the mission that started to unravel it all. Your soft objectives tasked you with checking marked containers. Some contained illegally modified weaponry, others contained pallets of drugs. The third, situated right outside the warehouse, contains a group of women. Starving, naked, beaten, abused. They are from the same cohort of the women found inside the auction house, forced to live in squalor while eating dog food from dog bowls. Before you is your objective vested in these suffering people. Rescue all civilians. You report it to your superiors, expecting aid, when an unusual conversation occurs.
Jesus, Talk, we've located the container holding several victims. We need Thames here now.
Copy that. Entry team, EFTs and trailers are...
This is FISA. Stand down and shut that door, entry team. We're sending a unit to secure the container and its contents.
Hey? No, we're not leaving them here like this.
Close the doors. Unless you want to interfere with a federal investigation, I suggest you shut the door and lock it behind you. Do your job and proceed with your mission. Understood?
Good copy. Put the other guy back on. We'll talk again later.
No, we won't be. FISA out.
A voice that you've never heard before, belonging to someone with authority transcending that of your police department, informs you to seal the doors shut with all the women still inside. To abstain is to imperil a federal investigation. The whole motive behind your involvement, protecting the city folk of Los Sueños, put to the side at the behest of a voice you can't identify. There are quite a few different interpretations of this scene, and I think at what point you find the container's contents may affect your understanding of it. If you find it before entering the warehouse, you may be predisposed to take Pfizer's sudden instruction as an off-putting but understandable safety concern. There are still armed suspects inside, and to let these people out during what could become an active shooter situation would be callous. But this is at odds with the scene's overall gravitas. Judge has never challenged direct instruction prior, nor have we ever heard this person before, whose name apparently appears in red in the subtitles just like the suspects, which implies a moral dilemma. There is a more severe implication that, to me, is better corroborated by tidbits of information found in other missions. I'm not going to delve into full detail. Isaac Morgan and Shane Please Shut Up both cover these topics of conspiracy in their own informative videos, but the places compounding this menacing undertone come quite a bit before this encounter. On two levels preceding the finale, A Lethal Obsession and Carriers of the Vine, the key suspects are ex-agents of the USIA, this world's parallel to the CIA. At first, they're assumed to just be mere violent lunatics. One of them leads a misandrist cult who violently targets male abusers, and the other lives in a cat's litter box running around naked with an AK-47. However, in Lethal Obsession's forest cabin, there are a multitude of drawings on the wall and tons of stolen government documents. Many of them make mention of the USIA, and generally carry a sentiment that they are an omniscient federal agency. They are repeatedly hinted at all across the game from as early as the gas station, and from Carriers of the Vine, you find a document in the evidence locker that the former USIA agent Elaine Raskin had in her possession. The exact lore implications are beyond my pay grade. In complete honesty, while kind of interesting, the idea that Judge was an unknowing MKUltra test subject turned super government operative kills much of the suspension of disbelief that the game has going for it. MKUltra did happen, it likely is still happening under another name, but focus on this in-game parallel turns the sensitive topics being covered into just set dressing for a spy drama. What makes the discovery at the port and Valley of the Dolls so harrowing is the fact this does go on. An extraordinary act of malice and exploitation that is an ordinary happening of our modern day. So something like this takes the brutal clarity away from the twisted facsimile of modern America and more towards a Hideo Kojima fanfic. But, that aside, it is clear that this shadowy upper echelon of intelligence is dabbling in matters anyone of repute would not be dabbling in. Whether this sudden intervention means they're willing to let these women potentially suffer to track the container's whereabouts, or if they're trying to turn a blind eye to the existence of the trafficking at all, the emergent outcome of it is all the same. Your membership of the LSPD's SWAT unit only seeks to remedy the violent outcomes of unaddressed social ailments. It's not to deny the value of detaining the likes of Amos Vol and uncovering their sickly rings, but rather to acknowledge that the man who pointed out this whole thing at Brixley's talent time wasn't a police officer, but a homeless person. Someone who had spotted this suspicious activity for a long time, but too poor to afford a cell phone, he couldn't tell anyone. That the many illegally modified guns you see suspects using throughout the game all belong to an Asian family, who have been modifying them in the hopes of paying off the inordinate medical expenses of their mother's cancer treatment. That the numerous extremist acts committed are a result of a society failing to look after its most vulnerable, and consequently putting power into the hands of organised crime to sway innocent people into being accomplices for morally condemnable actions. You are a band-aid fix, a quick response force only ever able to mitigate the damage rather than outright stop it, and ultimately more loyal to the agenda you exist to enforce rather than the people you've sworn to protect. A message made ever clearer by the fact to truly S-rank all of the levels. To obtain a certification in operational excellence, you have to shut the container doors and leave the victims behind. For people willing to look close enough, Ready or Not's environment reflects not just the actions of the culprits you detain, but the world that crumbles at the behest of the government you work for. It really is a feat of artistry to be able to achieve this in a genre so commonly associated with fascist sympathy, in exonerating imperialist conquest and endorsing the authoritarian constructs that these depicted forces work to consolidate. Ready or Not is unlike other shooters because it's beholden to a treasure trove of potential for future successes and developments. Which brings me to the lackluster existence yet potent implications of the Commander mode.
Oh no!
When Rainbow Six Siege first debuted, and for a few subsequent years afterwards, it came with a terrorist hunter mode. It was a holdover from its predecessors of Rainbow Six Vegas 1 and 2, a difficult co-op PvE mission that tasked you with dislodging dug-in extremist elements. Like most of what Ubisoft pisses out with disdain for creative expression, this was a half-baked addition existing only to foster extra money. The potential for this mode to be far better, to be a single-player campaign, existed in my head for a long time. A mode where you commanded a small team of these international operators, handpicked from your roster, and swept through these internal confines to defuse bombs and rescue hostages, where tactical planning and implementation of your kit to great effect would subvert the ever-looming penalty of permadeath, the potential punishment for failure where your operators could be mortally wounded and perish without recourse. An idea with potential to invite an audience who wanted to enjoy a slower pace of combat instead of being repeatedly spawn-killed by defenders playing like they're the attacking team to compensate for the impotence of their short cocks. This concept would be realised years later by Ready or Not's Commander mode. Or so you'd think. You see, while much of Ready or Not is a well-rounded and thought-out game, from the mere feeling of shooting a gun down to the colours of the wall surrounding me, the Commander mode shines a glaring light on some of the few inadequacies that hold me back from complete and total adoration. Where quick play gives you command of a 4-strong team of subordinates to clear maps with in pursuit of coveted high rankings, Commander mode is meant to be more so about the coherent experience of taking failure in your stride, where you have to look after the mental and physical well-being of D-platoon SWAT officers at risk of losing them forever, where you can't quickly restart to subvert the consequences of your blunders. Each officer is distinguished by name, AI-generated plasticine face, and the ability they have. Some allow the team to kick doors open on the first try, others improve aim. Some bolster the fidelity of your body armor, others have a chance to get suspects to surrender on the first yell for compliance. Like titles such as XCOM and Darkest Dungeon, there is a tactical macro game focused on logistics and long-term strategy that counterbalances the micro-focused short-term combat layers. The mental well-being of your officers, negatively affected by failed missions or the deaths of too many suspects, is supposed to work similar to the likes of Darkest Dungeon's stress mechanic. The information of each mission is supposed to necessitate different strategies afforded through different loadouts so that you are best equipped to handle diverse threats of increasing severity. Notice how I said supposed to. The main problem with Commander mode is this logistical aspect that is meant to inform your decisions is half-baked and extremely shallow. The deteriorating mental well-being of officers does little to affect their in-game performance, and the consequence of neglect is simply that they go to therapy for an extended duration. Each one has very little individual identity, so the emotional potency of permadeath, the loss of a digital entity you came to care about, doesn't exist. These dead officers can be immediately replaced, and the time taken to unlock their utility isn't so inconsolable to make it a punishment you can't endure. Unless you're playing the game so impossibly bad that you are losing entire scores of officers on every mission, they remain a purely expendable resource that you feel little to no attachment to. Rather odd, because when I look at a pack of ham I'm about to put in my sandwich, I usually feel rather sorry for dead pigs. Your precinct station is very well detailed, as is everything else in the game.
I want you.
Everywhere you go, there are conversations told through acting performances of varying quality.
What do you think of the new cooperation agreement with Coast?
I can't believe this story you're telling me. It's macabre.
And figures standing around in their different offices seeing to their duties. It feels annoying to see this level of detail, but no thought given to how making your officers exist in the station, sharing their own conversations where their personalities are shown, would make their potential death have some emotional stake. Often you hear your officers say something on missions, like expressing disgust at seeing a dog killed in a gas station, and while these added details to add dimension to your comrades are nice, they aren't substantial enough to make it an involving experience. More debilitating than that, though, is how it applies to your weapon loadout. In early access, night vision goggles shared an item category with the likes of a gas mask and anti-flash lenses. Many of the maps at the beginning of development were shrouded in darkness. Twisted Nerve's drug laboratories were one of the first ever levels to be played through, and necessitated the use of illumination gear. Because NVGs came at the cost of other valuable utility like gas masks, it often meant players would have to use flashlights mounted on their guns. They came at the cost of warning suspects of your presence, but were considered overall worthwhile. However, upon full release, NVGs were given a separate slot for mounting, which meant that you had constant access to this piece of kit without cost to anything else. This trivialized any need for the flashlight, and deprived your sortie sessions of the costs and benefits that made choosing items interesting in other games. Inventory selection became less a matter of necessity reality, and more so, a question of vibes. This is the main problem. Despite the existence of 3 different genres of lead dispersal, you have zero need to ever take anything but a rifle. SMGs are laughably impotent against the later enemies, requiring you to dump entire magazines to down dissident gunmen, and shotguns can become troublesome when faced with a foe that's taken someone as a human shield. Rifles wield tremendous stopping power with the exact precision necessary to deal with difficult encounters. They pierce armor and overall only take a couple of shots to down someone, meaning your ammunition lasts longer so you can afford to take fewer magazines for more of the powerful stun grenades. The problem isn't that the game revolves around one-shot kills, but really that there is no discernible downside to using a rifle that makes the supposed mobility of an SMG more worthwhile. The only thing people may talk about is overpenetration, but throughout my few hundred hours of playing this game, incidents of accidentally hitting a civilian through a suspect practically never happen. This isn't overall a bad thing. There are a wide choice of options in this game, meaning more things a player has to play with and enjoy. Along with a vast array of cosmetic options, this means you can have a lot of fun outfitting yourself as different fictional and realistic brands of class traitor. The problem is that, when you're trying to provide logistical restraints to create a sense of choice that is vital for these permadeath campaigns, you don't have any. From start to finish, you can complete every single mission without changing from the default rifle you are given. If anything, it often feels like I'm faced with greater adversity, not from well-armed suspects, but my own team. It shouldn't be understated that Void Interactive did a remarkable job bringing the AI from gormless cannon fodder up to actually reliable teammates. They don't have complications often enough for it to be a consistent problem. Often I find these guys are so good that I have to take point man to ensure I actually get to play. But it was only in commander mode where I realized just how badly they can ruin you. If you have the Iron Man mode on, perhaps to gun for an achievement, your death will delete your save file. It's imperative that you do not make a mistake that will expose you to fatal gunfire, moving slow to not take unnecessary risks. The problem arises when you get to the mission Elephant, the infamous level in which you have to rapidly insert into a school besieged by active gunmen. I tried playing it the realistic way, and it felt kind of boring. I don't know how the boys at Uvalde did it. It's a rather harrowing level, working as another example of how Ready or Not pairs its premise with the harsh reality of current American living. Clearing classrooms barricaded with chairs and desks just to hear pops of gunfire from the other side of a building is genuinely rather chilling. To know that this is a tragedy occurring almost daily in the States and that continuously no major change follows is a heart-wrenching failure of society. They just can't find bipartisan support to tighten the gun laws, you see. Politics are very, very complex. That's why they found it almost right away to try and ban TikTok for undermining Israel's propaganda campaign. I'm starting to think this might be deliberate, because it makes it easier for the United States Army recruiters to groom high schoolers into indentured servitude if they already have battlefield experience. This societal failing, overshadowing just another day in America, is only eclipsed by the propensity my AI team has to set me up for failure. You are in a race against time to stop the gunmen from locating and killing civilians, as well as to defuse 2 bombs planted in randomized positions. Speed is key, and you can't waste time slowly clearing rooms or detaining civilian contacts. This is especially perilous when your death will send you all the way back to the start of the campaign, meaning it's very important you have your team close by to assist you. However, my AI squad does not approve, and would much rather spend their time handcuffing crying tweens to their desk, enough so that one of the gunmen has a chance to bestow a third nostril upon a defenseless school teacher. Often on Elephant, you have to push through the level alone and chance your save file and getting spit roasted by the gunmen in the corridors. The fact there's an option to edit your formation, a needless addition, but not an option to stop my team automatically detaining people, nor to stop them from loudly announcing I'm attempting to sneak up behind a suspect the moment they see a pixel of an armed criminal, is a baffling design choice. I S-ranked this level back when the bombs were on 5-minute timers. I boast a gaming talent you could never hope to grasp. Consider yourself lucky, dear viewer, because had I escaped the grasps of my virginity, your mother would be just one of my many conquests. And matters are only exacerbated when you look around these numerous missions. Closets can be opened and closed. Dead suspects can be zip-tied. At a glance, these seem like purely vestigial interactive elements, and you'd be right to assume so. But once upon a time, these were both the subject of their own dedicated suspect AI updates, and, rightfully, they summoned a lot of excitement. It meant searching a room involved actually searching it with a deliberate gaze and not a half-hearted glance around the dead space. It meant a guy you thought you incapacitated would come up behind your team later and take you by surprise. For something like Commander Mode, the need to abide by diligent procedure and the cost of not doing so made you only further engrossed in the operation. I don't know what happened. I sincerely don't, because despite replaying this game multiple multiple times, suspects never try and hide even when they get advanced warning that I'm on the way. Telling my team to search and secure the area just serves to remind me of what I don't have as I watch them endlessly check tables and desks that suspects never hide under. The suspects only ever play dead after I deck them over the head with a door, and likely that's because I've never had any reason to switch away from the finality of a rifle round. The fact I've hardly ever seen this feature only further endorses continued rifle usage. As it turns out, suspects find 7.62 to be a very convincing argument. In its current state, the Commander mode is only worthwhile for completionists looking to pursue a frustrating and frankly unrewarding challenge. But hold on, dear viewer, this is not the end of things. The issues the Commander mode raises come down to a sense of lingering potential, but they do not come at the cost of Ready or Not's entire existence. If anything, it creates a sense of hope that there remains room to grow, room we've seen neglected for far too long. When I was in university, yet to solidify myself as the cringe furry pervert I'm known as today on the internet, I streamed myself playing Modern Warfare's campaign. This was accompanied by a delectable 1.5K bitrate and an incredible high quality microphone to deliver engaging commentary. This brought me to a fateful encounter with one of its missions, one you have no doubt heard about countless times since release: Clean House. This mission tasked you and a team of Special Forces soldiers with a nighttime no-knock raid of a civilian residential building inhabited by extremist soldiers. It was the polar opposite of what had made Modern Warfare a household name. No AC-130s, no grenade launchers, no large explosions, or widespread destruction. It was you and a gun under the cover of darkness, systematically clearing rooms with flashbangs and suppressed gunfire whilst distinguishing civilian targets from suspects. Who you thought was innocent and complicit changed on the fly, with civilians sometimes snatching guns from fallen combatants to attack you. It was a short but sweet indication of experimentation, a sign that the fundamental element of pace in a shooter was something Call of Duty developers were willing to tamper with. It's spoken about for the implications of its moral messaging by the likes of Jacob Geller, an important conversation to have when repeatedly faced with the brainlets insisting on its apoliticism, but also revered for the potential this mechanical arrangement had for tonal change, for meaningful innovation in these war shooters. To everybody's disappointment, it remains, really, the only mission worth talking about in a rebooted trilogy. I think this is why I loathe this franchise in particular so much. Past the surface level mediocrity it prices so high, past how the studio has rested on its laurels for so long and still irritatingly finds financial success grifting off the longing for childhood its aging player base is repeatedly scammed into paying premium price for, past the almost engineered failures to make their more successful launches seem much greater than their guaranteed mediocrity, past the continued touted bullshit about the apoliticism of taking money from military agencies to revise recent history of military atrocity, it's this that irks me. It's the fact that right here, in 2019, they had just created one of the most memorable and involving missions in their franchise's history, a mission antithetical to everything else yet infinitely superior, and instead of taking this inspiration to exciting new places, they left it in the dust. Can you imagine how enthralling something like SWAT 5 would be with AAA polish? A game where these brief flashes of intensity, where breaching compact urban environments at a careful pace were fully realized by a mainstream developer for a mainstream audience in a single-player tactical shooter with co-op multiplayer options. I can. And I think it's a pretty good endorsement to say Ready or Not brought that imaginary game to life. Ready or Not's existence is proof that shooter games can create distinct, meaningful identities for themselves by being willing to experiment with something as fundamental as pace. That settings of smaller stakes, where deafening explosions are not the norm and raucous gunfire is to be considered an omen, can flourish when developed with passionate diligence. Void Interactive achieved a lot of great things with this game, and, greatest of them all, is the design framework at the heart of Ready or Not that has the potential to revitalize this niche approach to shooters. A framework informed by the success of the SWAT series and how it created engagement through these extra layers of interactivity before you even got to pulling the trigger. It would be exciting to see the Commander mode taken further than just a shallow concept by whatever next game makes use of this core gameplay loop. Ready or Not in early access had each of their available maps accompanied by different configurable modes: barricaded suspects for normal, raid for relaxed rules of engagement but tougher adversaries, bomb threat for timed breaches, active shooter for wandering threats, and a fifth one called hostage rescue that was completely unplayable and got removed pretty much instantly. The reason why they did away with the game mode concept is self-evident. The environmental storytelling doesn't work so well if it's not specific to a certain premise of confrontation, and the challenge of active shooter threats loses its charm if it's on every map. The way quick play is now is perfect as a way to explore new maps and challenge yourself for higher ranks in controlled environments. But for Commander mode, using this system of multiple mode configurations for these pre-existing levels and randomizing aspects of them like Hitman does, spawn positions, main objectives, position and number of suspect and civilian contacts, would breathe a whole new life into it that would make Commander mode not something to play when bored, but the main reason to keep playing the game. Looking at all Ready or Not has to offer, I can't help but think of how miraculous this mechanical arrangement would be crossed over with the maddening world building of the likes of Disco Elysium or Signalis. Arriving on scene to quell the fallout of a mercenary tribunal in Martinez, or working as a unit of protectors responding to arising emergencies in Rockfront's communal residences, offer a great opportunity for environmental flourish to intersect with a brilliant core gameplay loop. Already, mods are making great use of what Void have left behind: new guns, cosmetics, voices, and entire maps to clear. The voice pack I use throughout my playtime is called SWAT J, a British officer voice that talks naturally yet yells with intensity that better establishes your presence in the scene than Judge's original VA.
You point that gun at me, we'll put you down!
But more than this, more than just what is fun shooting and moving, is the fact Ready or Not finally coalesces a realistic shooter with a prevailing truth of systemic injustice and societal decay that doesn't fumble for the belt buckle of government institution to start suckling. This is a game that shows disaster that could have been avoided, a game that condemns the violent actions of a criminal individual but does not forget to acknowledge the consequences of an increasingly neglected, malnourished, endlessly punished civilization. The abused women at Cherryessa Farm were driven into vigilante action by the countless men who exploited them and got away with it. An uncomfortable truth that makes you close the container doors at Port Hoken, ordered from officers reaching far higher than even you, a cog in the machine, could ever fathom. Ready or Not is a game made better by its message, that the American police institution, while emulating a public service needed to respond to instances of violent crime, ultimately is incapable of preserving a fair and peaceful society when the governments they work for conspire to further destabilize the lives of their own citizens for unknown motives, sowing longitudinal complex problems that will always persist and get worse regardless of how well funded the gun lockers are. This is why Ready or Not is unlike other shooters. Hello everyone. Thank you for watching the video through to completion. I hope it was worth waiting for. I had a lot of fun working on it, and a big part of that was down to being able to use Trey Watson's music. They're a music channel here on YouTube that I reached out to for a paid commission for a cover of Signal. They did a ridiculously good job, and they were communicative with me all throughout about any related delays, as well as kindly found the instrumental track for the song to put the a cappella cover over. I wanted to take the time to thank them for their hard work and to plug their account, which will be linked in the description below. They do a lot of great original work, as well as a lot of their own covers of popular anime songs, so I genuinely recommend you take a look. I'll leave you with Trey's lovely vocals to round out the end of the credits section. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you shortly for the next one.
引き金が溶けてしまいそうで憎しみが消えてしまったら君を殺せないから覚悟出してる罪が作った僕に変わるためにASM のライフで記憶のシグナル刻まれてるのに痛みさえ消し去ってしまう絆のスパイラル迷い込んだ僕は僕